Okay, welcome to this conversation, Sandeep. And I'm really excited to have you today. And for everybody, I'm with Sandeep Mangaraj, who is the managing partner of Aileron Group. So, Sandeep, tell us more about why you started Aileron Group.
Hey Joyce, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure speaking to you. Uh, you know, Aileron Group started like a lot of ideas, good and bad ideas from Vegas. I was sitting with a few friends after Money 2020 and thinking about, the big transformation shift that we are in the middle of, right? And just looking at what are the opportunities, what are some of the risks. And one thing that was very clear to us is that firms that can really leapfrog taking advantage of these transformative technologies are the ones who are struggling the most to make sense of it, right? Because as you know, this pace of change, Joyce, I've never seen it before, right? It's unprecedented. It's difficult for us who are wholly focused on it to keep track of it, right? So for someone who is running, let's say, a mid-sized bank, it's very difficult for them to know what's happening, what is hype, what's real, right? So first, the pace of change is unprecedented. Second, you hear these huge numbers, right? Billions and billions of dollars going into investments in AI, large institutions spending hundreds of millions of dollars. So you think, wow, that's not for me, right? I need big capital investments to be successful here. And then, once you start digging down a little deeper, you question, do I have the talent? Do I have the resources? Do I have the time to actually take advantage of it? So it's not something that actually rises to the top of the hundreds of things that you have to deal with, right? And then let's talk about the players, right? And their incentive to serve, you know, smaller institutions, mid-sized institutions, emerging institutions. And let's forget for now the digital natives. That's, I think, a totally different category. But, I want to use this, example of, say, a small asset manager, a small bank, or a small capital markets firm. The large AI, the large platform players, their incentive is to, hey, come and work with me at Microsoft, come and work with me, Google, come and work with me at AWS, right? So they have really good platforms and capabilities, but their incentive is for you to work with them, right? In a rapidly changing landscape where models are changing every day, it's a difficult commitment for people to make. And then most of the providers, the service providers, the consulting firms, the strategy firms, they themselves are trying to keep up with it. Long story short, what you have is a situation where there are firms that can really benefit from it. They can leapfrog, but they don't know where to start. And that's the gap that Aileron is trying to bridge.
Yeah, I think you talk about what's hype and what's not, and you're one of the individuals who have been working in the industry for a very long time. You've been at Capital One, you have worked for a long time at EY, and then you led the fintech business here in the US for Microsoft, and were right then when Microsoft was taking a lot of these generative AI products to market. And I feel like it's the perfect opportunity for you to take all those learnings and experience and help the small, medium businesses, as you said. So while you're speaking, I was looking up the SMB market. So there are about 33 million small, medium-sized businesses in the US, making up essentially like over 90% of the businesses in the US across different industries. And they employ over 47% of the workforce. So, to a point, if you think about the economic engine of just the US alone, and for these companies to go through not just the digital transformation that we were talking about a few years ago, whether it's cloud, mobile, analytics, etc. Now they're confronted with what is generative AI? How do I take advantage of all the things? And you touched on some of the challenges in this long tail opportunity, which is the medium-sized businesses and then also the small businesses, whether it's the understanding of the technology, the ability to really think about, okay, I'm just reading about all these models coming out. What do I actually get? How do I actually get started? What do I do? What's my strategy? and then the capacity and the capability to do it. So can you talk a little bit more about the challenges you see and what sort of opportunities that you are bringing forward to help these medium-sized businesses to navigate this while not feeling like they're being left behind?
Yeah, a good way to start is, almost it doesn't matter whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in retail, whether you're in financial services, all businesses, right, do knowledge work, right? There is knowledge work that's involved, right? And you talked, Joyce, about the fact that a lot of that has gotten digitized. Even though a lot of it has gotten digitized, it's all over the place, right? It's difficult for us to manage, between our emails, our Zoom, our Slack, our Teams, right? And think about an organization, right, with multiple people using these multiple tools, right? Our data is siloed. The insights are trapped in multiple places, right? Sometimes it is in email exchanges, sometimes it's in meeting minutes, a lot of time it's in file cabinets, and many times it's actually in the code that was written to, to programmatically do something. So knowledge is everywhere, insights are everywhere, ability to go and retrieve them, access them, it's difficult, right? And then in the past we have always needed specialized knowledge and tools to be able to do it, and we needed specialists. Now, the promise of Gen AI especially is that now we can start interfacing with this digital world using natural language. Now, that's something that, all of us are familiar with, right? And that's what we use to communicate. So the promise of using natural language to be able to get insights and draw this knowledge out from all the places that's entrapped in, that's actually the game changer. Now, I use the word promise a couple of times because we're not there yet, but we have been rapidly making progress. One of the things that I find interesting, and this is when I'm talking to executives of, firms of all sizes, you see, you walk through a very simple example, like say an analysis that, you know, we all do, right? Like, looking at the market or looking at whatever you pay and
Market
just
research. Yeah.
market research. Let's walk it through live using any of the available tools. And you do it today. And if you have been using the tools, you're a power user, you know how to get a lot of value out of it. And you'll hear a lot of, wow, that's possible. I can actually do that. This is public data that I can use. This is reliable. It's replicable. You know, people in many cases, their experience with ChatGPT 2 years back is what they think is capable today. But ChatGPT has evolved. It's evolving every day, and sometimes you don't know it, right? So I think the power comes from using it, right? And seeing how it can be applicable to your knowledge work, right? And that's the step that many people have struggled with. Where do I get started? How do I get started? And our approach is flipping the traditional way in which we have taken any past transformation, right? Any past transformation, especially when we are talking about firms and dollars and people's life and livelihood is at stake, we take a very cautious approach, right? We start with, hey, let me figure out what are the proof of concepts that may work, right? I mean, you've heard this lots of time, right? We're going to first crawl, then we're going to walk, and then we're going to run. And my view is, and our view is, absolutely not. That's the wrong way to do this. You should start with running. And by running, let me see what I mean. Use the tools that you have available, that are currently available, right? Take advantage of the billions of dollars that Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic have invested. Take those models and see what you can do with them. And again, what you can do with them responsibly. I'm not saying go ahead and use it for making, your next major investment decisions or start using it to directly interact with your customers. There's a lot that you can do today, which actually where you can manage risk, do it responsibly, and manage your knowledge resources much more effectively, right? So that's what you need to start with, right? So flip it around. Start getting value today. Learn how it's working, what's not working. And then you will start realizing there are ways and places in which you may need to make certain more investments, right? More investments in maybe, taking off the shelf models, but fine tuning it and adapting it to your organization. That's crawl, right? So sorry, that's walk. So by the time you do run and walk, you'll be ready for, totally transforming your business. And by the way, while you're doing it, you're learning, your people are learning, right? And you're actually, I would say speed is a risk mitigant. You're actually helpful, you're managing your risks because one of the biggest risks of not doing anything is that your customers and your competitors approach, will take it over
Right.
and your employees will also use it. So you are basically balancing risk and reward and you're gaining experience that you can then take to transform your business because a lot of us think this is going to be truly transformative. You could sit on the fence and say, I'm not sure, but not doing anything will make sure that, you know, the risks that you're not anticipating becomes a big problem for you in the future.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you said is, and I talked about this recently, is that I think the pace of innovation has really shortened, not because of some random process or thinking. It's a necessity because of the technology has moved really fast. So instead of to a point, let's figure out how to crawl and walk and run, like let's actually get our hands dirty, learn these tools, get our employees to try these things and use that to accelerate discussion and actual work around how do we transform how we work, how do we innovate, where can we innovate with some of these advanced technologies. Now, the question I will ask is, clearly the out of the box models and platforms we have now are much more powerful than even 2 or 3 years ago. And so yes, like people now have the systems and the tools and the models to help them to start running, or jog. Um, but to me, there are still things that need to be done inside the enterprise setting, whether it's security, hallucination. How do you think about that? Is that something that you are helping your clients to address and say, look, these are things that you can start using pretty fast to do rapid prototyping, to ideate, to really see what are the potential new applications or things that we can build to better serve our customers, to change our internal processes. But it sort of address like 80 to 90% what we need. And there is 10 to 20% where we have to be very careful, whether that's really putting guardrails around hallucination, whether it's getting our data together, whether it's training our employees to evaluate the output of these systems. How do you think about that 80-20 or 90-10 and the gaps that these off the shelf, out of the box tools are not addressing?
See, the key word is trust, right? Without trust, uh, I mean, businesses will really struggle, right, without trust, right? So all businesses take trust, especially trust, that employees have, their customers have, and other stakeholders have. That's sacrosanct, right? And if we are going to start ripping apart our business processes and introducing new technology, if that trust is diminished or lost, that's not something that you can get back tomorrow, right? So trust is really, really critical. So using AI responsibly, it's table stakes. That is not something that is negotiable, nor should it be negotiable, right? Now, let's just take that point, right? Using it responsibly is table stakes. That doesn't mean that we cannot use it, we should not be using it, or we should not be experimenting what is possible, right? All those three can be done. It can be done responsibly. And the responsibility is actually a function of multiple things. It's what you're using it for, what kind of data you're going to be using it for, what kind of controls do you have in terms of the data, protecting the information that you're using it for, who has access to it, right? And then who you're engaging it with, right? So is it an internal employee or is it an external customer? The risks changes, right? So what we have done is we have built, based on our extensive experience, a framework that we believe is fairly robust. What does change though is during run and during crawl and during walk, what are the dials, right, that you turn on, where you turn it on, how much you turn it on, that changes. And that's an evolving paradigm as the model changes, right? And as the use case changes. So one of the things that you talked about is hallucinations, right? It comes up, very often. And, we can park the philosophical question, is hallucination a feature or a bug? By the way, I think it's a feature. Having said that, yes, you cannot. I mean, if your results are not replicable, if you cannot rely on a system, right, then the results, well, then you're not going to be able to use it, right? So hallucination is a risk. However, the use case determines whether what kind of a risk hallucination can be or is, right? So for creative purposes, let's say we are brainstorming and we're using AI to help with brainstorming, hallucination is definitely a feature because that means there is some out of the box thinking, right? And it'll potentially lead you to explore options that were not on the table.
Right.
If I am using it to summarize a law document, well, then it's a big bug, right? A
Yeah.
legal document, then it's a bug.
Yeah.
So you got to tweak them based on what it is that you're using it for.
Yeah. So how do you then work with your, small, medium businesses? Like, do you go in day one, say, here's a framework and we're gonna teach everybody, or do you have a system in place, like actual tooling in place that help them as almost like a co-pilot as they go through experimenting with the other co-pilots? Like what has been the way of engaging with clients that you found most effective in getting them started the right way and the responsible way?
The very first thing is actually we set aside any discussion on technology and capabilities, right? The very first thing we do is we just focus on what's important to them, right? What are the outcomes that's top of mind for management, right? Be it top line driven, be it bottom line driven. I think that's the question that's most important, right? To say, what is it that would make a meaningful difference to me, right? So what are my aspirations? That's what we start with. Now, central to our run, walk, crawl philosophy is that we actually uh, go after that to uh, what is it that you're using today, your current tech stack, right? And the reason we start with the current tech stack is because many of the things that are important around privacy, right, around access, controls, cybersecurity, that is a function of what you have currently, right? And so what we like doing is based on your current tech stack and what it is that you have. We will identify if that's robust enough for you to be able to light up some of the use cases that we identified, which we thought were good for run case, right? And that's where we may have to calibrate our assumptions, right? So we may have wanted to use internal data, but we're not ready at this point. And
Right.
the reason we are not ready is because we just don't have the right, ways to control PII, or we don't have data classification and other things in place. So we will not then be advising you to turn on capabilities that will introduce new and unnecessary risk, unanticipated risk, right? So after you do an assessment of the existing tech stack, right, then we start recommending what it is that's feasible, what it is that you need to shelve. Now, sometimes this change actually is not all bad because not only it identifies things that you need to do in terms of just securing your digital estate, right? Making sure
Right.
that your data is actually in a form that it's usable, right? And gives insight. But using external data and external sources actually can add a ton of value, right? Which you can do without having to use any internal data. Right. So there are some very interesting examples that have come in when we have started working with customers on that. And then last but not the least, this is something that I am seeing in a few specific cases. There are restrictions and challenges that they have because of contractual and other reasons where they cannot use data in the cloud. But the good thing about all these open weight models that are there is they can actually be run, inside your perimeter on your servers, in some cases on your laptops, and they can give you significant improvement over what's possible or what was possible earlier, right? So there's no really one way to actually, skin the cat. Maybe not the right use, but there are multiple ways. There's like, we have a recipe And then what comes out
Yeah.
of it, right? Changes based on
Yeah.
the actual situation.
Yeah, it seems like a long tail opportunity. And just for the remaining time we have, just shifting gears, as we talked about at the beginning, the workforce is going to change. The knowledge workers or the industries with knowledge workers used to be immune to technology advancements. I think that probably has changed depending on who you talk to, because these models do come with certain knowledge versus just a prediction model or a classification model or a recommendation model. It can actually produce a lot more output similar to what human can do based on drawing from their knowledge and their experience. So where do you see the future work is going for knowledge workers? Do the medium-sized businesses, even large businesses, will uh, reduce the number of knowledge workers and have more co-pilots, or are the skill sets going to shift? Like, what's your view?
So skill set will absolutely change, right? So yesterday it was Copilot, today it's agents, tomorrow it's going to be robots. I don't know, the pace at which these things are changing, what it is that knowledge workers will be using will keep on evolving and changing. But uh, all of us, I mean, what is clear based on where we sit today, and if you were to look ahead for the next 4 to 5 years, each of us can have multiple AIs, in many cases working simultaneously for us, doing work that either are repetitive, uh, work that involves synthesizing a lot of information, right? Work that involves uh, ability to take information from disparate sources and synthesize it in a way in which we can use it, right? And definitely work that we have done in terms of create, in terms of um, just managing how we interact with other people in the organization, right? All those kind of work is going to definitely change, and we are already seeing how that's changing. So what that means is that, you know, my a challenge has been a lot of us have approached this platform shift the way we have approached prior platform shifts. So we have taken a look at, hey, today, this is what customer service means, right? I was using humans, then I started augmenting humans with IVRs, with chatbots. Now I'm going to put AI, and tomorrow I'll put agents. Today I'll use AI copilots. Tomorrow I'll use agents, and I don't need a thousand human CSRs. I'm going to have 50,000 agents working, computer agents working. I think that's totally a wrong way of looking at it. And the reason being, we need to look at what it is that the CSRs do. What is it that they're driving, right? Why do we do certain things the way we do it? In many cases, many times, why we are doing something has been because of the constraints that technology, processes that we use have imposed on us. This is a great time for us to look very carefully at that why and why we are doing it, and that will then inform the how we are doing it and see what's the best way for us to take advantage of the capabilities that are being unleashed now. Because if we don't answer the why and the how, what's going to happen is that we're going to automate a lot of inefficient processes and supercharge them. So what that means is we're not becoming more efficient, we'll just become more inefficient, right? And I don't know about you, Joyce, but every time I call now, I dread who is going to be at the other end. Am I going to be able to get to a human or not? Right. And all of us have come up with all these thousands of strategies in which, we're trying to get to a human. And the reason being, we typically do not pick up the phone in 2025 and call because we have not been able to solve it ourselves. Right. We are very used to self-service, right? We are very used to troubleshooting
Yeah.
ourselves. We don't pick up the phone, but When you pick up the phone, it becomes like this back and forth, right, with IVRs trying to get to an actual human. Think about wasted time, wasted effort, wasted productivity, right? So that's the reason I think the why is so important, and I hope that that's what we focus on because we are in a place at which, with the capability that is coming for knowledge work, we can totally rethink this value chain.
Yeah,
Eh,
I agree with you
sorry.
on that. I give you a short story. So I recently called HVAC and plumbing company, and the person, quote unquote, picked up sounded like human. But because I also work in the AI space, I know that it's a bot. But it sounded like human. Probably because using some of these newer technology generating human-like voice, be able to transcribe my questions in a way that allow that agent to respond with a human acceptable response, pretty personable, and basically said, I will have XYZ person to call back shortly. And the person called back, the next person called back is the actual person, a human to do that. And I think in the old days when we call, for example, HVAC plumbing, you actually get a person answering the phone and to ask you what the problem is and what do you want to do. That small use case, I think, was a big opportunity that has become more of agent driven, eliminating a first sort of human layer. But I do agree that there are other areas where, to a point, we really need to ask the why we're doing the things the way that we do it today. And are there ways to do it better and while leveraging the talent in our company? I do think that with the advancement of a lot of these technologies, it's going to be a big change to the knowledge work. I think we'll agree on that and how people work.
Yeah,
But it's going
I
to
tell
take
you
time,
what gives me a
right?
lot
It's
of
going to
hope.
take time. The business processes don't just change overnight. There are lots of steps to even change one business process in enterprise setting. So that's a
Yeah.
counter to the fast adoption. But I think the technology is getting there pretty quickly to allow for much more disruption or change in future work and business process automation.
Yeah, sorry I interrupted because for a second I think the Zoom just cut off. So I thought you had paused. Sorry about that. Uh, I do want to, pick up on this theme and share the hope I have, right, about knowledge work changing is always for the better, and it's from personal experience. When I
Yeah.
started my career, I was an econometrician, so I did a lot of modeling work, right? Modeling, different kind of modeling work, right? So I used to build uh, models, credit card models, retail banking models. At that time, I spent at least 80 to 90% of my time cleaning data, right? Making sure that I had the right, basically, it was data
And it's
cleansing.
still the case today.
Yeah, right, right. It was data cleaning, it was documentation, it was a lot of, what I would say, like, work that were absolutely essential. They are good in me learning the ropes of the trade, but the value add that I was doing was coming from 10%, right? Now, where we are, even as I have been, working in the industry, I did see that proportion change, right? So instead of a 90% on non-value add versus 10% value add, I know I'm making a generalization. Not all of the 90% is non-value add. It started changing. That dial is going to swing dramatically now, right? Which means that, knowledge workers are honestly going to be unchained from a lot of things that they were doing and can focus on truly driving value for themselves, for the organization, right? And the second example is like, when we've started Aileron, we are AI first. You know, we can do a lot with, four people, five people that previously needed 50, 60 folks. So it's changing. It's going to make us more productive for sure. It's going to make us more effective for sure. And the hope is that it's going to make all our lives more fulfilling.
I think we're going to end on that note. Sandeep, thank you so much for this interesting conversation and sharing a little bit more about what you're doing at Aileron Group. Very excited about what you're building for the medium-sized businesses and these long tail opportunity. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.